Good day, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Digital Ag Global. I'm Clyde Graham, a consultant with Keystown Solutions, an agribusiness company. And today we're going to be taking stock of the AgTech landscape in 2025. As always, I'll be joined by Yurii Kovalchuk of Qaltivate. I'll be here to add his insight from a software development perspective. And then our guest, Jack Ellis, we're going to be introducing it in a moment. But we're going to take a look at the landscape, the systems for ag tech globally, and where we think, and Jack's going to guide us through this, we're going to see success and momentum, and on the other hand, probably some areas where the success may be delayed or deferred or might not happen at all. So from climate smart agriculture to precision agriculture, from the investor sentiment that drives funding and startup momentum, we're going to try and cut through the noise that's out in the ag tech sector and see what's really working in the world of digital agriculture and perhaps what might not be working so well. Whether you're an operator, investor, or innovator, this episode will help you understand the direction the industry is heading and where to place your bets. So, Yurii, maybe you could add your perspective on the topic today to get us rolling.
Sure. Thank you, Clyde. Guys, Yurii Kovalchuk, CEO and co-founder of Qaltivate. We are helping companies in agri-food space to create digital innovations. And today we're gonna discuss a bit more how 2025 is playing out for agri-food innovations. There were a lot of predictions at the end of 2024. Not all of them comes true, and there are a lot of interesting recent development that we want to discuss today. So we're gonna help you to understand what's hot and what's not, and Jack gonna help us to navigate the space and understand whether some success cases gonna be in the industry by the end of the year or not. Before we jump and introduce Jack to you guys, I just want to remind everyone that Digital Ag Global is offering partnership packages. So if you want to become a part of our network, have access to speakers, to our insights, our audience, feel free to drop us a line and we'll get you sorted. With this said, Jack, please go ahead, introduce yourself, and we'll start our discussion.
Sure. Thanks, Yurii. Thanks, Clyde. And thanks for having me on. Glad to be here. I'm Jack. I'm a senior associate at Cleantech Group, where I lead the agriculture and food practice. And in brief, Cleantech Group is a market intelligence platform. We offer bespoke research and consulting services to our members. And our members fall into kind of three groups. There are corporates, so mainly heavy industrials, some financial services providers. The second group is investors, so different types of investors, from venture capital funds to pension funds to sovereign funds. And then the third group is governments and some NGOs. And we're helping all of those members to really understand and engage with clean tech innovation. And by clean tech, we mean any technological, any novel technology really that drives resource efficiency and ecological sustainability.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great, Jack. So let's maybe start on a positive note and maybe try and get your views on what you see as the areas where really innovation is succeeding in ag tech. And there's been a lot of talk on AI lately, and I note that in Canada, our new government under Prime Minister Carney has actually appointed a minister with a full portfolio dedicated to artificial intelligence, and that is an indication of I think the significant promise and interest that has. And so I'm wondering how you feel that AI fits in the ag tech landscape, and maybe you can go on to talk about some of the other areas as well.
Sure. I mean, that's a timely question because we've just recently undertaken a research project looking at AI in clean tech more generally, not just ag tech and food tech, but clean tech more generally. People can go to our website at Cleantech Group and check that out. But what we found was agriculture and food, which is just one industry group we look at. We also look at energy and power. We look at materials and chemicals, transport and logistics, a few other areas. But within agriculture and food, that is where the most venture investment has flowed to AI-powered innovation of all those industry groups. That kind of, it kind of makes sense, right? Because of all the industries that we look at, agriculture and food is the one that traditionally is the most manual, right? It's the one that is most reliant, or traditionally has been most reliant on manual labor. We know that agricultural workforce, the human agricultural workforce, is shrinking globally. In fact, the only places in the world where the agricultural workforce is growing are the very poorest countries on earth. Everywhere else, lower middle income countries, fewer and fewer people are going to work in agriculture, even though the population is continuing to grow and the demand for food is continuing to grow. So it actually makes a lot of sense that we would be investing in solutions that automate agricultural processes. In Canada in particular, I know that Canada has kind of seen itself as a bit of an AI powerhouse. So, and not a surprise really that Prime Minister Carney might add an AI person to the cabinet, I suppose, from that perspective. In how that relates to agriculture, it's not clear yet, but it will be interesting to see if the new AI minister, even talks about agriculture, because I would argue, it should be high up on his list of things to be thinking about.
I think the labor issue, and I'll come back to you in a sec, Yurii, but I think the labor issue is really important. That's been a huge part of the evolution of agriculture, going back to the agrarian revolution in the 1800s, when first beginnings of mechanization started in terms of tractors and harvesting equipment and all those kinds of things. But there are significant challenges still. I mean, we're dealing with very perishable food products. The livestock industry has done extremely well, particularly dairy, in terms of robotic milking machines and things like that. So maybe you could expand a little bit on that whole labor, challenge, and how you see that providing opportunities for the ag tech sector.
Sure. So what part of what we do for our members is we track venture investments into these different subsectors within ag tech and food tech. And in 2024, moving into the first quarter of 2025, so the Q1 is what we have, the first quarter of complete data for this year. One of the biggest, actually the second biggest sector in Q1 in terms of venture investment, and in terms, it actually had the most deals done of any subsector, is what we call precision agriculture, and that includes a lot of these automation solutions, these AI powered or AI driven technologies. And I think that shows that there is a realization that we need to bring more automation to the farm level. In different ways, right? It doesn't necessarily mean having like robots doing everything on the farm. It can be as, I say as simple, that's probably not the right way of putting it, but it can be the more straightforward case of just using software solutions to manage farm processes to help farmers make more accurate predictions about how they apply inputs to their crops. Or in the case of livestock, how they manage their herd, how they move their herd, how they feed their animals. So yeah, I think it's the manual labor aspect, and the automation is one part of it, but it goes further than that, down to actual decision making and decision support, and trying to help farmers and producers to just become more efficient with resources, to use the inputs as effectively as they can to actually reduce their own costs, and get better yields, right? Get better yields from the inputs that they are using.
I think too, one of the labor shifts that comes from AgTech and technologies like AI too, it's not just replacing human labor, but it's creating jobs that are a lot more interesting and rewarding, and that, for example, farmers are doing more of the things that they enjoy doing and less of the things that they don't like. And I don't know many farmers that are really excited about like accounting, for example.
Yeah.
What about the software that is, going to drive so much of what we're talking about today? Where do you think the winners are in that software realm?
Well, as Jack mentioned, for sure, precision ag is one of the biggest chunks of innovations in agri-food space, and the reason is simple. Precision agriculture tools usually provide some sort of real-time or near to real-time data that helps farmers to make a better decision and also to optimize their operations. So whenever we talk about variable rate technology, spot spraying, stuff that help farmers save on inputs, that's like an instant, more or less, let's put it this way, more or less proven ROI for farmers. But apart from precision ag, there is also another subset or subdomain of agri-food innovation that we definitely should look into. It's let's put it this way, carbon and compliance tech. So there are a lot of solutions right now that helps big agribusinesses and big ag consortiums to actually track their supply chains and where their product comes from. And it's all based around 3 letters: MRV. MRV solutions: monitor, review, verify. Those type of innovations are super popular for 2 reasons. It gives companies a better understanding of their supply chain and from where they are sourcing their materials or products. It's important for sustainability reasons. It's important for ECG compliance, and also there are additional compliance, specifically in Europe. There is this upcoming, it's already approved EUDR, European Union Deforestation Regulation, that will require the actual proven supply chain of a certain products to European Union, and that's where software innovations like different MRV solutions will help farmers, processors, suppliers to actually track their supply chain. So that's another very big and I would say trending subset of agri-food innovations right there.
So I just wanted to pause for a second and point out to the audience that we are monitoring the chat. We'd be really excited to get any questions or comments from you about the discussion so far, or anything else that's on your mind, and we'll address it as we go forward. But audience participation is really important to us, so please let's hear from the audience. So Jack, maybe I'll try and put you on a spot could you try and give us a bit of a short list of some of the areas that you think are the most promising and advancing now, and look like they have some legs going on into the future in the AgTech area?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll go back and say precision agriculture in general. So any solutions that automate or semi-automate farm processes, and beyond that, just as we just discussed, like any solutions that help farmers and growers and producers to drive on-farm efficiency. I think those are, there's a clear, the advantages and benefits of those are pretty clear. And that's, you're seeing, looking at the actual investment trends and the corporate partnering trends, I think you're going to see more investments from corporates as well as from non-corporate investors, and more partnerships between precision ag startups and the corporate players, whether that's agribusiness, whether it's food companies. So definitely precision ag, I think, is a pretty good bet on the future. The other area that we have seen steady investment into over the years, and that I think will continue that way, is crop inputs. We call it, at Cleantech Group, we term this crop inputs, but it includes crop nutrition products. So that's fertilizers, to some extent biostimulants. It's crop protection products, so basically pesticides. And the third sort of subset that we include under that is crop improvement technologies. So that's not exactly inputs, but it's things like crop genetics, gene editing,
right,
trait discovery. That whole area of crop inputs, I think, is the other one that's going to be really compelling going ahead. It already is, but I think it's just going to grow in interest and continue to attract investment and interest from corporates, because what it's doing is basically allowing us to create the crops that we need for the present and for the future, and that's really important from a climate resilience and adaptation standpoint. If we can harness nature and harness the power of plants and create the crops that are going to survive in increasingly saline soils, in hotter, drier climates, or wetter, colder climates, whatever it might be. As climate is changing around the world, we need to be able to grow the same amount or more crops in those conditions, even though those conditions are rapidly changing. And these things like gene editing and some of these new crop input products are going to allow us to do that. So that's the one I'd bet on as well.
Yeah, well, those are excellent ideas. I mean, as the audience knows, I spent about 20 years in the fertilizer industry, so I'm a big fan of crop inputs and the power that they have to make farmers more productive and profitable. So I'm glad you still see a future for old technology like fertilizer, but enhanced.
Definitely a future for that. Yeah.
And certainly, as climate changes, we're going to have to make the most of the best farmland we have, and try to make some of the more marginal land more productive, as well. So Yurii, like a related question to all this is, in your field of engineering, do we have the engineering power to maximize these potentials? I'd just be interested in your view.
Sure.
On is the talent out there, and how do we, if it's not, how do we get it?
Talent is definitely out there. A lot of good talent at Qaltivate. Come ask, we will tell you what to do. But jokes aside, agri-food innovations, like generally speaking, in technology world, we've seen this recession for a couple of years now, and there are a lot of tech talents, good software engineers, developers who are cannot find jobs. Mm-hmm. But for AgTech or agri-food innovations, in a broader term, we need a lot of specialized skills. So it's not enough to be a good front-end or back-end developer. You need to understand some specific technologies. You need to work within the specific domain, and then that's when you become a valuable talent for AgTech startup or AgTech innovation companies in general. And when I'm saying specific technologies, I mean stuff like embedded development and IoT, a lot of Internet of Things, a lot of innovations are around remote sensing, sensor sensing, stuff where you need to actually work with the hardware. So embedded development and IoT solution, that's part of the skill set that it is required right now. Another big skill set that actually a lot of companies, like not only in AgTech world, it's data engineers, data scientists, people who can create a big data pipelines, data lakes, so manage the data that you will feed to your new AI algorithm or existing one to have some sort of insight. So people who work with data also is in a high demand right now. We definitely have talent out there, and a lot of solutions that are innovative solutions for agriculture specifically, they are already proven like scientifically on a level of different universities. But I guess the biggest challenge, it's not to prove the technology itself, is how to make it commercially successful. That's the whole different story, and that's where a lot of startups are lacking behind. You can have the best technology out there, but if no one is willing to pay for it, then you're not getting investment, then you are not on the top of the list of Jack's research, and you're not moving anywhere. So it's really important not just to prove technology and have a talent to develop it, but also to commercialize it, make it available for farmers, for general public, and then grow based on that.
Yeah, and obviously we need a whole ecosystem for innovation that involves not only investment, as Jack's been talking about, but also the talent. And I think one thing that I think we overlook often is the technology aspect. Like not everyone is a software engineer, and you need people with the technology to, deploy that equipment, maintain it, calibrate it. Like all those things are important infrastructure, aspects. So let's switch and talk a little bit about, and I don't want to say negative, but certainly I think, Jack, I'd be fair to say that there is a limited pool of capital and human resources that can be deployed in the area of tech. It's a very competitive environment. So to some extent, there are winners and losers. Could you maybe talk about some of the areas where there's been a lot of excitement or promise, but the promise is not being discovered or met?
Sure. I mean, it's a limited pool of capital for sure, and it's increasingly limited, particularly in agri-food tech. But I think probably across the board at the moment. But agri-food tech is definitely one of the more affected in terms of availability of funds. Yeah, when we look back at the trends over the past couple of years, the high water point of venture investment into this innovation in this space was like from 2019, 2020 to 2022, and then it began to drop off sharply in 2023 and has continued to do so into into the start of this year. And when you look at which subsectors within AgTech or agri-food tech, we're getting a lot of investment back then and substantially less now as a proportion of the total. I mean, one of the sectors to pick out, and this will have been widely discussed elsewhere as well, is indoor farming or controlled environment agriculture technologies. So that segment, raised really quite eye-watering. I should say certain companies in that segment raised eye-watering amounts of capital a few years back, and some of those companies have actually gone bankrupt of late. I mean, one of the kind of high-profile ones was Plenty, which announced its bankruptcy earlier this year, and it had raised, I can't remember the exact figure, but a lot of money. I think what happened in that segment of indoor farming is that there was a lot of there was probably some confusion really about how to have a longer term business plan and strategy. A lot of the companies here were trying to be both a tech company and also to be a farming business, right? To actually produce whatever it is, leafy greens or berries, and sell those to the market and compete with existing conventional farmers. That's two pretty different businesses with different margins, different dynamics and everything. And I think they struggle to do that. So that's one area where I think where you do see way less investment at the moment is indoor farming. It's not all negative by any means, though. I think there are, the technology there is still really, there's still a really compelling use case, right, for technology that allows us to grow more food in a much smaller space with fewer inputs. It seems that we need to be able to make use of that kind of technology in the future. And there are, I mean, you've seen even this year, there are companies like 80 Acres Farms that have actually made acquisitions and seem to be, taking a slightly different, adopting a slightly different strategy to growth and trying to, hit profitability. So there are some positive signs despite the general downturn in that segment.
Right. Well, and I think in Canada specifically, we had an interesting experience with the legalization of cannabis. And that led to a huge surge in investment in indoor farming technology. And it's pretty clear to say that a lot of those companies have struggled to maintain that for a number of reasons. So, but I think the other driver of vertical or indoor controlled climate technology is going to be trade, in that, and that's kind of an artificial construct related to the market. But certainly in Canada, there's a lot of interest right now in locally grown fruits and vegetables to displace U.S.-based production that Canada depended on for a long time. Yurii, from your point of view, do you see any areas that are slowing or not reaching what had been thought to be their potential?
Vertical farms, for sure. There's been a lot of investments, as Jack mentioned, and a few companies went bankrupt, not only Plenty. And just to add to that, I think it's very important to distinguish whether you are a farming company first or you're a technology company first, because the concept of growing indoor leafy greens or berries or whatever you're growing, it's already proven it works. But when you're trying to sell this technology to people or to companies who want to become farmers, that's a whole different story. And that's something to understand. Plus, capital heavy kind of endeavor to take on. Another subsets of agri-food innovations, I think, that haven't proved themselves yet. One of those would be kind of a blockchain solutions for supply chain tracking, traceability. There were a lot of those companies who've kind of tried to integrate blockchain technology into existing agricultural supply chains, but it doesn't work really well, in my opinion, for two main reasons. Very fragmented supply chains, compare to different countries, meaning you have one way of doing business in US and Canada. In Europe, it's a whole different story. In Ukraine, it's a whole different story. And applying very high-tech, cutting-edge, innovative stuff like blockchain might not be the best thing to do. Another subset would be B2B agricultural marketplaces. So there are a lot of startups that want to bring together farmers, input providers, equipment providers, and put them all in one digital ecosystem. But we haven't seen the very successful cases there as of yet. My best guess is really dependent on where you are at this world. So it can be a B2B marketplace, but it would be specific to a region or a country. So that's something to be aware of. Local customization, so to say.
Yeah. Jack, did you want to throw down on that?
Yeah. So I on the B2B marketplaces. Yeah, great point, Yurii. I think what some of the there were players in that space, especially in South Asia, Southeast Asia, where I was based for many years. But there are some players in this kind of B2B platform space who tried to integrate the entire agri-food supply chain from the smallholder farmer all the way to the point of the consumer or the retailer. And I think what some of them have realized in more recent times is that agricultural or agri-food supply chains are pretty established, right? And they've been established for many decades or even longer than that. And there are set players in that supply chain. There are intermediaries along. So the idea of disintermediating those supply chains sounded great from the start, right? The idea that we won't have as many middlemen, will cut the time and drive efficiency that way. But you need to, there's a realization that you can't necessarily do that. You can't necessarily tell a whole industry that it doesn't have a job anymore and that they're a problem rather than part of the solution. So one trend I've seen with some of these kind of B2B players is that they've sort of shortened the section of the supply chain that they are going to focus on. So they might be focusing on farmer to market, farmer to the first level of intermediary, or they might focus on something upstream of the farmer, so the inputs to the farmer. Right. So those kind of models that actually, and this is probably the case across AgTech, right? The models that are going to fit into a lot of existing paradigms rather than trying to disrupt them completely with technology are the ones that are going to are more likely to have longer term success, I would argue.
It's hard to eliminate the trust factor in business, whether it's whatever kind of business you're in. But I think particularly in the agri-food sector, there's a long-standing cultural dependence on trust. And that's why in the fertilizer industry, you have to learn how to golf, because there's a lot of golfing that develops trust and relationships and things like that. And I don't think that's unique to, the legal profession has that lots of different groupings have different ways that they develop that kind of trust. So, humanity still is there, I think. So we do have a question from Adriana, who's, I think if this is the Adriana, I think one of our loyal followers here on AgTech Global. Can we expect increased interest from investors in AgTech innovations. And I think we've touched on this, that there's there's not a stampede to invest in ag tech. But what is the outlook for ag tech investment? Is that all going to come from venture capital? Are there other ways that we're going to make investment capital available for this sector?
I hope so. Yeah, so I think, as we've sort of discussed, the venture capital investment into these ag tech areas of innovation is on a downward trend. I don't think we're anywhere near the bottom of that yet. So there are hard times ahead for ag tech innovators in terms of fundraising from venture capital. But I think that it highlights there's a bigger kind of problem in funding for ag tech solutions, which is that in many cases, these were not the typical venture capital investment proposition anyway, because in many cases you're not looking at like really rapid growth and having a 10-year fund with a huge return and all the rest of it. There's much longer. You're looking at much longer time horizons, as we've just discussed. You're looking at trying to fit into very established, centuries-old paradigms of how agri-food production happens. And you're also looking, another aspect is the seasonality of farming and food production, right? So there's all of that, which means it's not always ideal for most venture capitalists to invest in. And there's also the fact that lots of agriculture and downstream food production is very capex intensive. So the innovation in this space, likewise, is going to involve a lot of. It just does involve a lot of hardware. It involves a lot of building of facilities, factory scale food production equipment, and so on and so forth. And that, again, has never been really attractive to the typical venture capitalist. You are seeing lots of philanthropic investment moving into the space. You're seeing some of the more patient capital from like some of the entities that I mentioned are our members, like the bigger kind of funds, government-linked funds, and so on. And you're seeing as well, increasingly in agri-food, corporate investors as well, and they're going to be really important to help get ag tech innovation to scale. So there is a kind of diversification of capital sources. The overall picture, though, is I think it's going to be tough fundraising environment in the months and years ahead for ag tech innovators.
Perhaps the silver lining to that is that there will be survival of the fittest, and those best able to navigate that environment will succeed the most. Yurii, you think you?
Well, I mean, I need to agree with Jack that it's not all gonna be good, and probably we will not see a lot of like very big round raised those type of things when we compare AgTech to fintech or any other industry. But I think that corporate partnerships, corporate investments, and acquisitions is a exit strategy that a lot of AgTech companies are thinking of right now, because that's how you can engage with the bigger players in the market, and that's how you can grow, and that's how you can put your product in front of your customers. Very good example. I'm gonna do just a bit of name dropping just to kind of prove the point. John Deere acquired a company, a precision agriculture company in the United States called Centera, and that's a very good example how actually proven technology that help farmers to do a better spraying, better input applications, get acquired by a big player, and that's how they can grow their product. Not ideal. I don't know. Probably it was their exit strategy, but that's, I guess, the reality we're gonna see moving forward.
Yeah, interesting. So we do have a comment from Kevin Cormack. And I think, helping farmers feed the world is where he's at. Oh, there's, I think we've got a copy of that from Olia. Thanks, Olia. And so he says he's presenting to a web summit on AgTech of AgTech investors this week. And he's saying that his perspective, it is a tighter market indeed.
That's true. It's a tight market, and you need to be better than 99% of your competition to get the investments you're looking for. Another thing to mention, and that's something Jack said before, grants, governmental programs, they are also can help specifically early stage startups to kind of get off the ground and start developing their product, create MVP, and have some early traction with early adopters. That's also something to be aware of.
Yeah, and certainly at the micro end, I think it's always true that in every kind of business that if people are going to attract capital, they're going to have an incredible business plan, marketing, very professional. That doesn't matter what you're, however you're trying to get money, you've got to make sure that people understand that you're serious and that you've got a plan and you've thought it out. And I think that's universal from the beginning of the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. And my advice to innovators is that you're already working really hard to raise funds, but don't just speak to VCs. As Yurii mentioned, look at grant programs for sure. Look at try and get in touch with philanthropies, with family offices, and don't discount. I mean, as you said, Yurii, like I think for a lot of founders, it's not always seen as ideal to be looking for an M&A exit or for partnering with corporates. I don't, that's kind of because people want to be the next Google or whatever, right? But realistically, in the agriculture industry, the best way for you to get your innovation and to have a chance of getting your innovation into the hands of farmers is going to be working with the incumbents. Don't be afraid of talking to the corporates and trying to partner with them.
I think that's excellent advice. And I do wonder if, as in Canada and North America, but also parts of Europe, there's a lot of scale in farming that doesn't exist maybe in other parts where smallholders are still the dominant model. But there's a lot of capital at the farm level that could be a source of investment capital. And I think it has the added advantage that if you're drawing on funds from a farmer or a group of farmers, they really understand the marketplace because they are the marketplace. And so I wonder if that's something that we haven't tapped yet. I believe a farm in Canada, the average annual revenue is about $4 million a year, and there's a lot of farms that are.
What about average profit? Another revenue, it's a whole different story. What's about net profit, not just revenue? It's
Well, and
you can make 4 million revenue and have 70,000 profit, and that's it.
And to that point, actually, I mean, there are farmer co-ops that have begun to invest in startups and in innovation. So that is another source. Just to flip on the other view on what I just said about not being afraid to work with corporates. The startups actually have a position of the innovators have a position of leverage here as well, in that the corporates are the ones who need the innovation, and you are the ones, the innovators, you're the ones who can provide them with that. So it's not like a one-way street where you're going to corporates to ask for money. They are asking for innovation. So there's a lot of fruitful partnerships to be had there.
Okay, so we have a couple of other comments, and I'll try and summarize. A couple of the comments are fairly long. So there's Ritesh Gandhi. He's talking about pioneering innovation with passion, precision, commitment to excellence. Oh, there it is. You guys can see that as well, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Okay, there it is, right there. And what, 56.6 billion? Do you think that's a reasonable estimate of the market cap for AgTech? Depends on
I'm
how
not sure.
you
I'm
define that.
not sure.
Jack, does that seem reasonable?
I don't know. It looks reasonable. I should say that we are tracking investments specifically into clean tech in AgTech. So it's going to be, the figures I have are a lot lower than that. But these are figures that.
But thanks for that, Ritesh. And I like your reference to passion, precision, and a commitment to excellence. And I think those are three excellent things. My three watchwords are always insistent, consistent, and persistent. And that's what I think leads to a lot of success. We have another comment from Guidance. I don't know who this is from, but guidance and support systems in place to help aspiring entrepreneurs navigate and succeed in this space.
I get that from the second part of
that's the second part of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's, it says for me, I don't really know that I'm an expert in this area, but compared to many other sectors, ag tech faces numerous critical challenges that require critical solutions. I think that's a fair comment, but I do think that ag tends to succeed best when it operates as a business and learns from the general principles of the marketplace and innovation. But certainly there are specific challenges. I think you mentioned some of them, Jack, of related to clean technology. And I think despite some of the challenges we've had about developing carbon markets, some of the basic principles of ESG, environmental sustainability and governance in business are still drivers of innovation. And so, perhaps as you said, Jack, if corporate entities or larger companies need innovation, perhaps they're going to have to provide some incubation for that. And I see that with a lot of companies like, so for example, TELUS is developing a very strong ag division in Canada. It's a large technology company, and they're doing a lot of work to inspire and support innovation. And kudos to TELUS Ag for that area.
And an industry, but so you were with IFA, is that right, Clyde?
No, well, International Fertilizer Association is the global association. I was with Fertilizer Canada, which is the Canadian.
Apologies, but the reason I mention it is that IFA is just one example of an international kind of body in agriculture that is running innovation programs, as Ritesh was alluding to. So and that's another place that innovators can get some of that support and guidance, is by looking to the big trade groups, industry groups. A lot of them are now running innovation programs, accelerator and incubator programs, and that kind of stuff. So that's another place to look for support.
You're right. I think looking at the annual reports of the websites of some of the major corporations and what they're interested in and programs they have is not a bad place to start. Not everybody wants to go to mom and dad or the rich aunt or,
Yeah.
somebody else in the family, because, that's a pretty risky, enterprise. But yeah, I think everybody is, but I think investment is like water. Water will find its own level, it find its own way, and the money will probably flow to the best opportunities, and that is the reality of the marketplace. But I do believe farming succeeds best and agriculture succeeds best when it operates within the market. Obviously, there's room for government and philanthropy and things like that, but market principles are still the big part of success.
Yeah, it's gonna be a mix. Can't just rely on private sector venture capital. Can't just rely on government grants.
Mm-hmm.
But we do need innovation in our food system. We do need to drive resource efficiency. We need to ensure that we're feeding the number of people that are going to be on Earth now. We struggle to do it now, even though we actually probably produce enough food. But into the future, there are going to be more mouths to feed. There's going to be less or a diminishing amount of cultivable land for us to grow food on.
Yeah.
Demand for animal protein is going to grow. All of these are really, really pressing problems. And technology is going to be a big part of the way that we are going to be able to solve for those problems. So we need to find what solutions we can to accelerate that technology.
Yeah. So this has been a great discussion. I do see we're maybe a little bit longer than we normally go, but I think the discussion has been excellent. Thanks to the audience. This is the best audience participation we've ever had. So hopefully in the next episode we'll even get more comments and questions from the audience. Jack has promised Yurii and me a surprise hot take, and Yurii and I are both very excited to hear Jack's hot take for AgTech.
Okay, it's a little bit left field, and I'm not I don't think I'm the only person to say this, but I think it's possible that in a few years we're going to look back now, and we're going to say that one of the most consequential agri-food innovations is actually GLP-1 and semaglutide treatments, right? So this is like
biotechnology stuff,
yeah. I think Ozempic is the most recognized. So these are the anti-diabetes treatments that have been kind of repurposed for weight loss, and the reason I say that is because there are these further consequences of people using these treatments. So yes, it's having an impact on their weight loss, but it's actually also, there is early research to indicate that the people that are on these treatments are wasting less food. And food waste is obviously a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, to the environmental kind of footprint of agriculture and food production. So that's great. And another consequence is that the people on these treatments, not only are they wasting less of, they're buying less food, the food they do buy, they're wasting less of, but they're buying different food. So they tend, again, really early days, but the trend and the research suggests that they're buying less kind of processed meats, less processed grain products and dairy, and they're moving more towards whole foods, eating more seafood and a lot more kind of vegetables as well.
Mm-hmm.
When that gets to scale, that could actually have a very big impact on agriculture, right? On what farmers are producing to try and keep up with the market and keep up with demand. So yeah, that's my so-called hot take, is that we'll actually look back and say that was one of them, that GLP-1 like treatments and semaglutide treatments are one of the big, most consequential innovations in agri-food.
Well, and I think I'll just take the privilege of commenting on that. One of the things I think we've tended to measure the success of agriculture globally has been in terms of the total carbohydrates and calories we produce,
Yeah.
with a lot of the grains and to some extent the oilseeds as well. And that I think increasingly we should be also measuring, though, the protein we're producing per acre, whether that's animals or plant proteins, and then also the vitamins that tend to be associated with fruits and vegetables. And so I think that kind of feeds in, hopefully, to what you're saying, that defining success should be done in perhaps a different way when it comes to agriculture. It's the nutrition as opposed to just the sheer quantity, or quality over quantity, I guess. So, as always, we turn over the closing comments to Yurii. Jack, I've enjoyed this a lot. Probably too much. I probably haven't paid enough attention to the timing and everything. But Yurii, do you have some closing thoughts?
Guys, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for your activities in our chat. Jack, thank you so much for joining us today. Very fruitful discussion. For our audience, stick around for next episode. We're gonna get back to you in June, and we will try to discuss something very interesting. And in the meanwhile, if you guys have an AgTech product, you want to become a speaker, you have an interesting topic or some strong opinions about agri-food innovations, feel free to join us, drop us a line, and we will discuss it. With this said, thank you guys, and enjoy your evening.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Yurii. And by the way, Yurii doesn't mention enough our partnership opportunities. If you have a partnership opportunity, please let us know. Thanks again, Jack. Thanks, everybody globally, for dialing into Digital Ag Global, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.